Welcome, fellow modelers, to radio-controlled aerial photography by Adrian and Hugh Kingsford. In this videotape, we're going to explore 4 different designs that have all been specifically tailor-built for either still or aerial video photography. This unusual twin-boom looking aircraft is taking off on a still photographic sortie. We'll be looking closely at this design as well as 1 or 2 others using side or oblique photography. The model being used on this flight for a still photographic sortie was photographing a nearby farm, and we hope to interest you with this videotape enough to get out to the shed and start adapting one of your current designs or tailor building a design for still photography. This one has no undercarriage for landings and overall is a very good performer. Getting started with still photography. Numerous designs can be looked at for still photography. We recommend something small and lightweight strapped atop the mid-wing section, such as in this case a thermal soarer design of 8-foot wingspan. The photograph was taken over the starboard wing looking towards Marybank. A Piper Cub model, here an original design with a span of 9.5 feet, can take light to medium weight cameras aloft. This is an example photograph taken over the tail section looking towards Nelson in the top of the South Island, New Zealand. Another design called Falcon. This one has been specifically tailored for side and more recently overhead or vertical photography. The cameras have been taken to quite an altitude, and as you can see, the coverage is excellent. A farmer was, in this case, able to actually count the number of trees. This design was fitted with high aspect ratio wings for a more endurance type performance, and it has given us some lovely scenic photographs to date. This one looking over the northern reaches of an estuary. Many photographs are possible from your own designed machine. Coverage of market gardens and farms, including kiwi fruit orchards, has been achieved in New Zealand, and we hope we'll whet your appetite so that you're quite keen to start off taking photographs. Designing of a model aircraft is a very important area, especially with regards to photography. These 2 concept designs have been specifically built just for still photography, either side or vertical. The Falcon features large flaps and a wide chord wing. The T-tail offers maximum protection if the model should land in rough areas. Let's remove the wings so as we can see just how much space there is for the camera box setup, which we'll look at shortly. The 2 peepholes, the one for vertical photography and the one for side photography, we can see easily. However, this model features a novel setup in the form of a detachable rear fuselage section. Simply a case of removing the push rods from the servos after flying, taking out the 4 nylon lugs, and this rear section comes away, making transportation in your small car much easier. Maximising protection of your camera is essential. We see here an example of a white foam and balsa protective box. This first one is for side or oblique photography. It doesn't really take much time to cut one of these out and put it together, but what is important is that the camera fits snugly into the white foam. In this case, the power winder attachment and the lens surround hood have been carefully matched. The vertical or overhead box in this case is almost ready to go into the model aircraft for final checking before flying. The Falcon has plenty of room in its fuselage for not only the servos and radio gear, but the camera box. We recommend the use of further foam protection. This also helps to minimise vibration sources such as the engine. The cable release mechanism must be connected from your camera through to the servo. We recommend this be held in place by a hardwood and aluminium block. The cable must not be permitted to move past the reach of the servo. In the end, your installation could look something similar to this. The Phoenix is a very different design concept. It features twin booms. The servos are housed in these for the tail controls. It also features a drop-off steerable undercarriage system for takeoff and landing in very confined spaces. Looking at the installation of the camera in the Phoenix, we see the similar layout as was in the Falcon. Once again, make sure that all connections are firmly checked out before you go flying. The model has been operated out of some very difficult areas. It's not always possible to find a suitable takeoff spot. You can see the operation of the drop-off steering system here. It all depends on exactly where the location of your job is and the subject to be photographed. Knowing a little bit about cameras and the coverage they give is very important. Here we see the simulated effect between a zoom lens, a normal lens of 50mm, and a wide-angle lens. As you can see, the wide angle gives us much more coverage over the ground. When taking overhead or vertical photographs, you must bear in mind the amount of coverage that you desire. Number 1, wide angle, 2, normal, and 3, not very good telephoto. So which coverage and which installation are you interested in? We recommend all three over a period of time. Number 1, the vertical overhead, 2, the side or oblique, and 3, the forward viewing camera. Each has its advantages. Photo stages. Flying your model in the circuit, you must think about the object to be photographed very carefully. We recommend 3 photographs for experimentation to start with. 1 a little before the subject, 2 on the subject or parallel to it, and 3, 1 more just for good luck. So positioning of the model obviously is a very important factor in flight. This example photograph was taken using a 50mm normal lens. The lighting conditions on the day were bright, and therefore the exposure was not a problem. Many other photographs, as we've mentioned before, are possible from your model. You must think carefully about the amount of coverage that you desire, and also the flight path of the model. This photograph is taken from a much higher altitude, covering an orchard of some acres. A wide-angle lens is often much more suitable for this type of work, as it does give you that extreme coverage that the normal or zoom lens do not. Another photograph. This one is covering kiwi fruit orchards near Motueka. The photograph is also well balanced and very scenic. Cameras. There is a reasonable amount to know about a camera before we take one of these expensive machines up into the sky. This 35mm Ricoh camera, with the lens hood removed, is merely one brand of many available on today's market. When flying, the focus should be set ideally to infinity, and the f-stop, here on setting 8, should be adjusted according to the lighting conditions on the day. The shutter speed should also be set in accordance with the f-stop. On a dull, overcast day, not only will you have to think about the f-stop, but also the film speeds. These will need to be much higher. On a bright, sunny day, preferable for all types of photography, be it still or video, the film speeds could be much lower, around 100 ASA for example. Having a camera with interchangeable lens option is a big advantage. Depending on the nature of the subject to be photographed, you may wish to use the 50mm lens, or in this case, as seen fitted, a 28mm for wider coverage across the ground. This third lens is a telephoto or zoom type. We do not recommend the use of this, mainly because of its bulk, its narrow field of view, and also its weight. We hope you've enjoyed this section on still photography. Moving along into in-flight videos and some of the basic points we need to think about in design concept. The Phoenix has been very successful with the still photography, and we found that it was simply a question of building another pod to utilise between the boom, centre section and outer wings. This gives us the option of either still photography or forward-looking video filming. The forward-looking video pod has been very simple to construct. Seen here sitting on the droppable undercarriage system, we're looking at the front protective glass, 1.5mm thick, and this protects foreign matter from entering the front of the pod if we should land rather heavily. You can see the plug system at the back, and this simply detaches upon reaching takeoff speed. There we see the two rear steerable wheels. And now looking into the front of the pod with the hatch removed, we're going to be installing the camera. Rubberized foam has been very good for protecting the camera and also in aiding to dampen the vibrations from the engine source. These can be cut to suit, and even in this fairly closely fitting camera vehicle, we've had some excellent photographic results to date. After placing of the foam and the camera in the front, the strap from the rear of the camera is now being connected to another point in the back of the pod. This is simply to enable minimizing damage of the camera in forward movement. Minimizing vibration sources is very important. The engine is the most important area to give careful consideration to. It's quite amazing how the quality of your film may be affected if you do not give consideration to the engine. Here is a sample piece of film taken off a sealed road with the Phoenix model. There was insufficient packing around the camera and around the engine. As you can see, we experienced some loss of colour, and a wave motion appears on your screen. This is solely due to the vibration source, such as the engine. So please do give careful consideration to these areas before attempting to fly with your in-flight design. Most compact video cameras do come with a power zoom lens. On this flight we're experimenting with the zoom lens and following a couple of paradise ducks. By controlling the zoom lens with a mini servo, we can also see how any vibration and extreme movement of the model, such as steep turns, detracts from otherwise what would be a nice flowing picture. There are a wide variety of Video 8 Handycam cameras available on today's market. We recommend a fairly lightweight and portable type camera, setting the focus to infinity and manual. Some cameras are unsuitable, although they may be of high quality. This one is much heavier, longer, and would require a much bulkier aircraft design. It does, however, come with some excellent features, such as macro photography for close-up work on the ground. We're going for an in-flight filming session with the twin boom design, taking off from this relatively wide country road. Keeping the model straight on takeoff, we see the droppable undercarriage being left behind there. And away we go, climbing up to an altitude of some 1,000 feet. The lighting conditions on this day, even though we have an overcast sky, is quite attractive. By spending a little bit of time thinking about the possibilities with regards to photography, we feel confident that you too can achieve similar results even in these conditions. The low overcast makes for an interesting film effect. Beneath us we see an area called Rabbit Island. There is quite a lot of forestation going on in this particular area, and it is through coverage with model aircraft that geographical surveys and many other one-off photo jobs have been successfully achieved. We've cut the engine on the twin boom design, and as the model has a very good glide, we're going to continue filming at a lower camera angle. We see the expanse of the Waimea Plains stretching out to the right. The takeoff road is just evident in the lower part of your screen. Turning into sun, we have a backlighting situation over these estuaries and inlets. It can make, as we mentioned before, for a very interesting photograph. Here's another set of completely different lighting and atmospheric conditions. The design was flown to quite an altitude and struck several different layers of turbulence. This was due to a southwesterly flow. For perfect in-flight video effects, you must fly your models in very calm conditions. Although the stability of a design will help, generally speaking, even the slightest bit of turbulence will cause the picture to move about. Looking into sun, we see the somewhat diffused and scratched effect from an early piece of celluloid cover. This is not recommended, but we do recommend the use of 1.5 to 2 millimetre clear glass. This not only gives some protection in the forward-looking pod, but also enables a nice clear picture to be obtained. For filming effects such as this, a third design has been constructed. We are enabled to fly low over the water with the Galapagos, and obviously the resulting film is a completely different effect as obtained from the two previous designs. The model has a wingspan of 9.5 feet. Wing chord width is 22 inches. And overall the Galapagos is quite a slow flyer. The forward area for housing the filming cameras is much larger than the twin boom design we've seen. Once again, you note that 1.5 millimetre protective glass on the front, together with a celluloid glass on the top, permitting light to come through for the video sensing unit. Perhaps the symbol on the side of this craft denotes its true function. The engine is an OS 120. The engine, along with the fuel tank assembly, is housed in an overwing gondola arrangement. This also makes anti-vibration easy. The tail assembly is fully detachable. The fin slots in between the horizontal stabilisers. Let's see if we can get the engine on the Galapagos started for some water taxiing tests. That's funny, it was going in the shed.
Have another go.
It must be the glow plug. Ah, finally the sound of sweet success. Let's head the Galapagos out onto the water and see how she performs. The camera is placed at eye level, that is, in this case, very close to the water. It will enable us to get a totally different effect altogether. Let's have a look from the Galapagos. This man was spotted on a late Sunday afternoon. He says that he forgot to bring his waders or the dinghy. Maybe it was problems with the OS 120. We're setting up the Galapagos for an in-flight special effect, landing the model very close to the shoreline. When flying in close proximity to any road, in this case a quiet backcountry lane, you must position lookouts on the road. The Ministry of Transport have even helped us on more than one occasion. The idea with this special effect is to land as close as possible to the side of the road, just in the water's edge. There goes our friend returning from traffic duty. For some flying sites, you may have to travel quite a distance, and this obviously means an early start. On this occasion, we're making use of the reflections from this tidal estuary. Also, the early morning light at this altitude of approximately 80 feet is giving some depth to the photograph. We recommend, be it still photography or, as in this case, in-flight videos, you practice flying the model at different altitudes. It's surprising how different the scene can look by flying the model at different levels. Seen here, the same scene except virtually at 0 feet. And finally, let's take the model to quite an altitude over this lovely scenic spot near Tasman Bay. We see how different the area looks now from an altitude of 800 feet. Also, the tide is receding, and the view over the mudflats is not half as scenic as it was with the reflections on the water. Let's take the model up a little higher and have another view looking towards the west coast. The model is now close to 1,500 feet. You notice that in this climbing position, there is more sky evident in the picture. Swinging to a southwesterly position, we see the Mount Arthur Ranges. The estuary certainly has a totally different look altogether now that the tide, after 3/4 of an hour, is well on the way out. Looking eastwards now, we see the vapour trails of 2 high-flying jets. Cloud formations, of course, can be very interesting and make a well-balanced picture. Looking towards the east, we now see the many orchards in this area. And very shortly we're going to cut the engine on this particular flight, and you will notice the nose will drop. This will add for another different effect altogether. We see kiwi fruit plantations there on the bottom of your screen, as with some of the irrigation ponds that feed the orchards and kiwi fruit groves in this particular spot. Looking into sun is known as a backlighting situation. For this, we recommend the use of a protective lens hood cover. This will prevent the sun's refractive rays from entering the lens in the forward-looking video situation. The lack of undercarriage on the Galapagos design enables smooth and easy landings on flat surface areas. In this case, after a 50-minute flight, the model is going to be skimming in over the grass and landing on the mud next to the road. We've seen what the drop-off or fixed undercarriage models can do. Now we're going to look at a completely different category, the hand-launch design. By having a hand-launched vehicle capable of being launched and retrieved from difficult sites, such as this 350-foot vertical coastal cliff, coverage of various properties can successfully be achieved. Oops, better be careful there. The view could be quite interesting from this site. And away goes the pterodactyl, launched well behind the cliff for obvious safety reasons. Positioning of the pterodactyl hang glider type design out over the waters of Tasman Bay. We see the coastline sweeping into Ruby Bay, and with the tide partially out, it creates a little bit of contrast also in the picture. Here we see the cliff we mentioned recently, quite a bit of erosion as you can see. The landowner had been felling some trees near the edge of this cliff and will be replanting with small pine trees in other parts of his property. As we approach for landing after a successful filming sortie, we're experiencing a little bit of turbulence over the cliff top. Lining up of the 16.5-pound model, powered with the Super Tiger 75 motor, is not always easy in turbulence. Another factor to think about is that sharp propeller. This should be interesting. All down in one piece. Let's have a look at a similar landing with the pterodactyl design, this time in a nice flat field situation. Simply keep it into wind as with most models, a little bit of power, and there we are. Makes it look very simple indeed. The pterodactyl machine is the only design concept that we've found can be successfully operated from and into rugged mountain country sites. This mountain takeoff site is 650 feet above sea level. After takeoff, the pterodactyl is climbing to an altitude of nearing 1,500 feet. The vantage point over Nelson City is made possible because of the altitude on takeoff. If you are ever contemplating flying one of your camera-equipped models over or near a built-up area, you should consult your local body authorities, as in this case was the air traffic control at Nelson Airport notified of our proposed flight plan. You can see the television translator on the right and this large area of pine tree plantation. And also, if you look very closely, in the bottom part of your screen you can just see the takeoff site and the modeller's car. After the cruising flight at high altitude, It's just a question of bringing the model down a bit lower for a nice low fly past along this bush-clad ridge. A light southwesterly wind is just starting to blow, so it's definitely time to bring the hand launch design in for a landing. It's time now for a West Coast filming adventure trip. The West Coast is a beautiful area with the southern ranges often covered in snow during the winter season. We're going to be doing some special low-flying film sequences here with two designs, the Galapagos and the Phoenix. The Phoenix was successfully flown close to the edge of these tall native trees, and the whole object was to try and emulate the effect that a waterfowl bird might see upon reaching the placid lake, Lake Mapariki, near Franz Josef. The weather deteriorated badly over a week and a half's filming. However, many successful flights, including water landings such as this, were achieved in the drizzly conditions. Retrieval from the lake was made easy on numerous occasions with this powered Zodiac dinghy. Certainly a novel way of getting your model aircraft back to base one. Flying was not only successful over the Lake Mapariki, but also over this rather flood-prone river, McDonald's Creek. The model had to be flown at 0 feet in order to achieve the special in-flight effects. We did experience some problems due to the extreme range of the model from the operator. This loss of signal was later overcome by installing a vertical whip-type aerial, such as on some radio-controlled cars and yachts. The dull lighting conditions present meant that we had to film at 5.6 on the f-stop, and for special effect we also used slow motion. Landing the Phoenix near the creek's edge wasn't too much of a problem. Obviously we did experience some minor damage on this occasion, but overall the strong apply flat belly of the Phoenix has proved very successful in operating from these sorts of areas. The rainfall on the west coast is measured in feet and not inches. The weather really decided to pack in on this occasion. However, for the keen filming modeler, it still means that he's got to get out and check out these potential flying sites. This one doesn't look too bad. Ground's a little bit bumpy though. We're going to be taking the Galapagos for some flight test experiments using a new open circuit video recording system. The whole idea is to enable the pilot to control the radio control design from a small television screen in the back of this vehicle. Takeoff was made even more difficult on this occasion due to a very strong crosswind.
There she goes.
Barely visible against the low rain clouds in the native bush on the west coast, the only way of successfully piloting the Galapagos in these conditions was from the monitor screen. Tracking of the model was made possible with a television aerial. At all times pointed in the general direction, we were then able to successfully record the images from the model onto the video recording equipment. As the Galapagos flew further and further away, following the river from Lake Mapariki, control was maintained by looking purely at the screen. After a 40-minute flight, there's just time for one more low pass before landing. And there we are, all down in one piece. After returning from the west coast, and hopefully leaving the bad weather behind, we're now going to do some more design and flight testing with an unorthodox design called the Stork. The Stork is an experimental design, and it is constructed of low-cost materials such as aluminium and garden plastic for covering of the wings. The camera pod is slung low beneath the square tube aluminium fuselage, and the tail section from the Galapagos has also been utilised on this design. Designing may be for some of us and not for others. It can be quite exacting, and it also has many moments of frustration along the way. Never mind, we must start somewhere.
Number 2. The undercarriage fold is not strong enough.
Let's try that one again, Sam.
There it goes again.
This time they think they've got it right.
She doesn't want to go. Nearly. She's off. You're right, Abe.
Finally, after numerous changes have been made to the Stork, such as the leading edge of the wing, 2 pounds off around the motor, and the undercarriage has been projected forwards, the Stork is proving a very successful, stable, slow-flying camera vehicle. Perseverance really does pay off. You can see the dihedral, and this is made by the king post and rigging on top of the design, stretching the outer wings, very similar to some of the First World War designs. All in all, she's flying very well now. The pterodactyl, as you have seen, is also an unorthodox design, constructed of aluminium tubing and garden plastic for the sail. Some 50 hours of successful in-flight filming has been achieved with the pterodactyl, but like all experimental craft, there were problems in the early stages with this one too. That's right, lean to the left, it might help. Once again, perseverance paid off. On more than one occasion, this inexpensive and easily portable model has been successfully flown to altitudes approaching 1,000 feet. As you have seen, this throw and catch type model is the only type of design we've found to date that can be operated from areas such as this and back into other areas such as this. Let's see how fast he can run. A multi-role photo model, Loftus is adapted from the still photo design Falcon viewed earlier in this tape. You can see the side viewing peephole and the forward viewing peephole for video cameras. Designed for all aspects of still and video photography, this model has a span of 9.5 feet. In this view, once again, we see the peephole for side photography and importantly, the gondola-styled engine mount This has been put together in order to help minimise vibration and is easily installed or removed for checking. We see here the large flaps essential for slow flying, and also the hatches for aileron and flap servos. Very soon we'll be taking the Loftus for a high altitude in-flight video filming session. In the meantime, we'll just remove the two-piece wing with its bright colour scheme, and just a few more minor checks to be completed before heading out to the site. Having arrived at the location and completed the pre-flight checks, we're almost ready to take off. Final check with the engine. Sounds pretty good to me. And off we go. Up goes the tail nice and smoothly, and we head the model off to the right into the light southwesterly wind. This flight was particularly enjoyable, so let's have a look at some of the resulting video in-flight footage. Well, as you can see, we've taken the model up to a good altitude. Everything's going really well on the power side of this flight, so now all we need to do is to check the glide. From an altitude such as this, we certainly get quite good coverage over the ground. Remember, the downwards looking camera has been installed in such a manner so as to see less sky and more earth. There goes one of our favourite flying sites just on the left of the screen. And in the background we see the village of Mapua. The model's glide is proving to be exceptionally good. Passing overhead now, you can see the wide 22-inch chord wing giving plenty of lift. Just a question of lining up for that approach on the road, and let's hope it all goes okay. Well, I guess we can't always get the landing right, can we? So far, in this tape, the emphasis has been on powered camera aircraft. But of course large gliders can also be used to take aloft some light or medium weight still cameras. Here we see a 13.5-foot wingspan design called Krakatoa. It's being tested out with a small lead ballast weight prior to installation of a pocket-sized camera. This coastal cliff soaring site is a real beauty, and many good flights have been had here over the years. Here, another glider called Rex is again being test flown from the Kina Beach site prior to installation of a small pocket-style camera mount. Usually it doesn't take a lot of work to install one of these, but we do recommend you thoroughly check out your design before the installation is made. So, a simple ply pylon, activated by a mini servo, can be quite successful. If you are unskilled in adapting or designing, why not try scaling up a proven shoulder or high wing design? Once again, we would recommend several test flights with a ballast weight before you install that expensive camera and begin filming. Now, generally speaking, there is more weight associated with the high quality cameras, so do be careful not to overload your model. Not only could this prove costly, but your airspeed will increase, giving less time to think about photography. More powerful engines will usually produce greater vibration, so do isolate all suspect sources. We see here a specialised rubber isolation mount system. In a successful photo flight, correct positioning of the airborne camera must be first priority. Coupled with an understanding of photography, this is the combination to lead you to success. We hope you've enjoyed this tape. For further information and interesting correspondence, contact Adrian and Hugh Kingsford, 12 Toru Street, Mapua, Nelson, New Zealand.
This is my RC video plane. I've designed it specially to fit the camera and transmitter. It's powered by a KNB-61, has a 7-foot wingspan, and weighs about 13 pounds. The payload, which weighs about 3 pounds with the battery, consists of this color CCD security camera, an 80 milliwatt amateur TV transmitter. This transmits on 432 megahertz, which is just below channel 14 on the UHF band. I also have a microphone on board which tells me audibly how the engine is doing. It transmits through this simple dipole antenna mounted here. To receive the video signal, I have a high-gain UHF consumer antenna which we follow the plane with, and it's connected with 300 ohm twin lead to a VCR directly below it. From there, the audio and video is sent to a monitor 50 feet away inside my van, where I sit and fly by TV. I've modified my RC transmitter to accept coax. It's connected to a horizontal dipole antenna, which I mount above my van. That way I can switch between the existing antenna and the external antenna, and I won't have to worry about the reception being blanketed by the van when I'm sitting inside. Now here's some scenes from the RC video plane.